Working at Harvard, and at what point did you decide to, again, combine your love of dance and movement and love of food to do what you're currently doing, which is the choreography in the kitchen?
Right. So the other reason, and this is important contextually, that I decided to work at Harvard was because I wanted a strict 9 to 5 that would not bleed into any other aspects of my life, because I knew that this was going to be a year of continued transition, and I wanted to give myself the space to think creatively. So it was pretty early on in the year, once I started at Harvard, that I was speaking with a friend of mine who is the chef owner at Juliet in Somerville. His name's Josh Levin, and we've been friends for a very long time. And he was like, well, I think it would be really interesting if you thought about maybe giving some performance lessons to us at the restaurant, because I think it's such a performance, but I'm not trained as an actor or stage presence person. And, I think maybe that could be good. And it was ironic, or, perfectly timed rather, because I had earlier that fall tested this, interview series, an online interview series where I would interview chefs. And one of the things I wanted to interview chefs on was their choreography in the kitchen. But I was thinking more in terms of plating and, table etiquette and all this. And I hadn't necessarily thought about what I might actually be able to bring to the table to enhance that. And I had always felt like, even though, the ballet world and the restaurant world are seemingly so far apart, that they share so many, they run along the same parallels, very same timing. Everyone's performing when everyone else, the rest of the world, is off. You walk into a theater and you're transported. You walk into a restaurant and you're transported, right? It is a performance. And so I thought about it more, and I was like, I think that'd be great. I checked in with a few other people who I really respect in the industry. Garrett Harker is a big restaurateur, and I floated the idea by him, and he was like, I think that would be fantastic. And so I was like, cool, done. So I did a pilot run with Josh at Juliet, and I did about, I think, 3 sessions with them. And we played around with, very basic concepts like, how do you stand? How do you what does posture even mean? Like, what does good posture look like? There are so many misconceptions out there of, throwing your shoulders back and like jutting your head up. And that's not right. It's arguably worse than the opposite. And so we played around with some of these very basic foundations, and I created a foundations training from that. And then we layered that training and take it into leveraging that strength and sustainability through movement and lifting heavy things or bending down. And then on top of that, we layer it further and start talking about actual presence and posture and nonverbal communication. And from that pilot, I've since founded an LLC, which broadly is called Choreography For Business. And I've worked with 3 additional restaurant clients. And yeah, that was where I was earlier, was working with, I guess, my 4th client now, Benedetto in Harvard Square. And it's been phenomenal. It's been so exciting to kind of dig deeper into something that I always knew was there, and to see the ways in which not only is it relevant and helpful for them as a team building exercise, as a physical awareness exercise, as tools for elevating the experience of their customers, but also how relevant it is for their daily lives just as human beings. And it's really that component that I recognized pretty early on that has kind of inspired me to move even beyond restaurants and work with corporations and salesmen and fundraisers and like anyone who's a human being.
Yeah. That's great. So this is kind of fascinating because I've caught you now in kind of the early stages of your business. As you develop this, are there particular books that you're reading about, expanding what you're doing right now, or people that you're chatting with?
Mm-hmm.
Or how are you, you've got a lot of fantastic ideas and great opportunities. How are you planning for the future and, setting everything up so that it is a systematic kind of way that you're growing your business right now?
Totally. So, well, number one, and this was also actually, you'll love this, because that first online article that came out about this, that I think you saw.
I did.
Right?
I saw, and then I contacted you, and then we met for coffee. Yeah.
Right. So this gentleman in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, he also read that article and reached out to me because he has two young girls who are dancers. Mm-hmm. And he has always found the way they learn and the way they are composed in public and the way they present to be fascinating. And he's also felt like there's a lot of untapped potential within this world of ballet that's so shrouded in mystery. And when he heard about what I was doing, he's like, that's interesting. Mm-hmm. And he also reached out to me, and he's since become my business coach. And he does a lot of, at the University of Delaware, he does a lot of presentation coaching and communications coaching at the university there. Mm-hmm. And so he's also fascinated by a lot of these concepts that I've been trying to tease out of classical ballet technique and performance technique and bring into, the more traditional workplaces. And so he's been invaluable to me in terms of being a sounding board for ideas, guiding me throughout some of these legal processes, some of the marketing stuff, which, is still a little on the back burner for now. Mm-hmm. But yeah, just strategy. And so we have weekly calls, and it's that, I don't know where I would be without that. So, so he's been a huge asset, and I have, I think, my, website and of course, the article to, thank for that. Mm-hmm. And, the other books that I've been reading that are amazing are, of course, are you familiar with Amy Cuddy and her work? A lot of her work is highly, highly applicable to what I'm doing, and a lot of it resonates with me. And I think there's a lot that I can use from that and, dig a little deeper or apply in a slightly different way to what I'm doing. And it's very helpful for me to read into some of the studies that have been done on this and what's really great about them and what's still being teased out within them and how I can kind of just pick and choose the things that I can play around with in my program. So her work has been really great. I also have really enjoyed just some of the mindset books. So like Carol Dweck and her, I think it's called Mindset, is all about the growth mindset versus fixed mindset. And, a lot of that I think is necessary when I'm coming into a space that has never had this kind of physical training and seeing how I can open people's minds to it in a way that is just a part of their journey onwards, as opposed to something that we're going to do once and they'll forget about the next day. So a lot of those social psychology books are great. I'm also starting to dig a little deeper into nonverbal communication science. So Joe Navarro and what everybody's saying. That's great. Some of the, salesman 101 books like Daniel Pink, what is that called? Everybody Sells? No, To Sell is Human. Sorry.
Oh, right. Yeah.
To Sell is Human. Yeah. And so that's also, just great. There's so much stuff out there. It's incredible. So much information that's right at our fingertips, and it's awesome. Have
you gotten into the Robert Cialdini influence?
Influence.
Parts?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I listened to that one. That's heavy. That's hefty.
Yeah.
There's a lot in that, but yeah, I listened to that, on audio.
Mm-hmm. Oh, good.
And that one was interesting. Kind of makes you
It does a little bit. And, his newest one, Persuasion, I've used a lot of those techniques in classes that I used to teach, and also like I taught some of them. Actually, so like the big one, I would have students do the because technique to see, first off, to get them over their fears of just asking for things, and also just to prove to them that they could do something that they think is impossible. And it's hard to think that just cutting in front of a group of people in line is impossible, but oftentimes people especially students get really self-conscious about it. And so I made them all do this exercise where they cut in front of a line at Starbucks, just using the word, like they couldn't give a real reason, but they had to say whatever it was, and then because, which is like the trigger word, and then make up something afterward. And all of them did it. All of them survived. Nothing bad happened to any of them, and they all learned something very unique about themselves. And that, it's like one of those things where oftentimes in this world you have to ask for something if you want to get it. Like you can't just kind of stay there in the wings. So yeah, it was a really cool experience that they fought me on. But there's a lot of really great things in his books and in the research, and it's absolutely fascinating on how certain words trigger certain emotions and thoughts in all of us. They're so universal, it's bizarre.
Right. Yeah. I haven't read Persuasion yet, but I should.
Yeah.
There's so much stuff.
It's good. And then there's like, you'll start going down I've been on a similar trek for years, and it's just like, there's just so many really cool books out there that just kind of talk about these different techniques and things.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you were chatting with somebody who was looking to transition from the dance world or even the arts, what advice would you give them about the easiest way to transition to something else after a world and having a past in dance?
So I think, and this is regardless as to whether or not they would have to go to college or not. I think unless you have a very clear idea of what you want to do, I think it's really important to try to set up short-term internships or experiments in areas that you think you might be interested in. I think it's too hard to, I don't think it's realistic to expect to end up in the place that you're meant to be in on the first try. Mm-hmm. I think it's really hard to get a full-time position somewhere and then realize within the first few months that maybe it's not really for you, and then to back out of that. It's hard to do that and not have it reflect negatively on, your resume or in the narrative of your story, moving forwards. I think a lot of people put a lot of weight on your intention, and there's nothing wrong with being like, I'm just going to try this. I'm going to try this temp position here. I'm going to try this internship there. I'm going to take a little bit of time to really think through what it is that I liked about that, what it is that I didn't like about that, as opposed to the alternative, which would be spending a lot of time in a place that doesn't really make sense. And then I would also say, like, what I ended up doing, which was going into this very, very full-time position at a very, very structured place. The reason, sometimes it's also okay to make a trade-off between things you need, like stability and structure and a paycheck, mm-hmm. and then your overall values and mission and sense of purpose. Mm-hmm. Because as an artist, you're moving away from something that was at the same time your job and your identity and your passion. and you're moving into something that's going to be disjointed for a while. And I think that if you can take that pressure off of yourself and be like, I'm going to go work at this